Men are dropping out of society in record numbers, especially Gen Z and younger men, although it is also millennials. But men are just giving up. They've given up on trying to find employment, they've given up on trying to date. A lot of guys have even given up on trying to even look presentable. It's like they don't even care about pretending to fit in. That's how bad it is. But certain demographics, boomers, older folks, and women of all ages, they really like to play dumb and act like they just can't wrap their heads around it. Like it's just some truly enigmatic generational mind virus that younger men are afflicted with. And who knows what's going on? It's such a mystery. Why are men giving up? I think a lot of these folks are just severely lacking in empathy. They just don't care. I know people talk about this online. There's plenty of videos about it on YouTube, but for the most part, most people don't really care about this issue. And if they do care, they actively blame all the hopeless men like myself instead of looking at this as a systemic issue resulting from a broken society. But if we want to actually find a solution and have most of these men get back to work and be productive for society, which is what everybody should want, it would obviously be better for everybody if more people gave a shit and at least attempted to be productive. But if we want to find a solution to this, we need to admit, as a society, there are very good reasons and obvious reasons why so many men have given up, and why more and more men every day are continuing to give up. The men that are dropping out, they are acting completely rationally, because it's really pretty simple. A lot of men have realized, from their own experiences, they don't get much in return from working hard and busting their ass day in and day out. Wages are low, and wages have been stagnant for like 15 years at least, while inflation has done the opposite. It just keeps increasing, inflation just keeps inflating. And it's really ramped up since 2020. I mean, it's not technically hyperinflation, I guess, but it feels like it. I mean, it's probably the most rapid inflation I've seen in my life. So wages just are not keeping up with the ever increasing cost of living. But that's actually not even relevant if you don't even have a job, which fewer and fewer men actually do with every day that passes. I don't know if y'all have been keeping up with the news, but it seems like every other company is doing major layoffs right now. I know I just got an email from LinkedIn about how UPS is doing major layoffs. And it's just like every day, it's another headline I see about some big corporation laying off thousands of employees. Okay, like things have already been bad. Things are getting worse. There's not a lot of places hiring either, especially for entry-level jobs. Good luck getting hired anywhere if you don't already have at least a few years' experience. All these problems with the economy right now, it's really hurting all the younger, less experienced workers out there. I mean, everybody's suffering, everybody's having a hard time right now, but it's really the younger folks. And, people like me that I'm a millennial, but I don't have as much experience, I guess, as some people think a millennial should have by the time they're my age. Yeah, it sucks. But really, nothing I've talked about so far would even matter if a guy could actually get laid. That's the bigger problem. I honestly think most men would be fine living out of their cars if they could still get a girlfriend. By the way, I was just saying none of that would matter if a guy could get laid, blah, 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 whatever I said. I just said it like that for dramatic effect. But I think most involuntarily celibate men that have dropped out of society, I think most would agree, it's not sex that's the most important thing. That is part of it for sure. But most men want actual love and companionship. Okay, the one night stand, that's not the ideal for most lonely men. Okay, we want a relationship, we want a loving relationship. We want to be loved by a woman and we want to love her back. It's as simple as that. But it's really hard for most men to find a love like that when they're still stuck living with their parents well into their 20s or even their 30s because they can't afford to move out, because hardly any jobs actually pay worth a shit. And then, even if you do manage to land a decent job where you make enough that you could potentially support yourself and a partner, there's no guarantee you're going to be able to find a woman that'll want to give you a chance. Because generally speaking, women do tend to prefer men that make more money than they do. And that's a big problem. I understand it to some degree from the woman's perspective, but it's a huge problem on a societal level because, okay, well, young women these days, on average, do make more money than young men. Okay, that is a fact. So that leaves a whole lot of young men in this society high and dry. It leaves these young men lonely. So, big surprise, a lot of guys have just given up. If you work your butt off your whole life for 20, 25, 30 years, and you never got any attention from females that entire time, it makes perfect sense to just stop trying. Even if maybe you did get lucky once or twice in college, if you can see that the opportunities have completely dried up and your future just looks bleak, what do you expect? What do you expect a guy to do in that situation? There are lots of guys that'll just keep going no matter what. They'll just keep toiling away. But there's also a lot of guys that won't. And that's not any kind of moral failing. It's rational. That's just exercising your decision-making skills in a rational manner. Imagine doing all the right things. Your whole life, you do exactly what everyone said you're supposed to do. You go to college and you work hard while you're there. You make good grades. You get your degree. Maybe you find a job afterwards. Maybe you don't. But you do all of that and you make it to your mid-20s and you just continually get nothing but the cold shoulder from any woman you've ever tried it out with. How can you blame a guy in that situation for giving up? And I really hate it when women are confronted with this reality that men face these days, and they say something like, well, you can't derive all your life satisfaction from women. You need to work on yourself. You got to find your own happiness. It's such an ignorant, privileged response. It's like telling a starving child in Uganda not to derive their happiness from food, while you're sitting there eating a deep dish pizza, just twirling the excess cheese around your fork, smacking your lips. It's real easy to say, what are you complaining about? Having a romantic partner isn't even that great. It's easy to say that when you're living in abundance, which is how most women in this society live. I mean, it's not even abundance even, they have a hyper abundance of options. Even very unattractive women have some options, even if not for actual love, then they have options at least for physical intimacy, which I know might not be ideal, but that's a lot more than their looks-matched male counterpart is getting. So it's really tone deaf, some of the things I see women saying about the male loneliness epidemic and men struggling with employment issues and whatnot. Something I find particularly upsetting is when a woman says something along the lines of, boo-hoo, cry me a river. Women didn't even have the opportunity to have careers until recently. As if it's justified for young men today to suffer for the supposed sins of their great-grandfathers. Although, I don't think it's even fair to say that women were oppressed back in those days. They had less freedoms on paper, but they also had certain benefits that went along with that. And, working men also had less freedoms back then in some ways. You could argue in some ways they had more freedoms, but I'm just saying women weren't necessarily oppressed. It just depends on how you look at it. And, they still get all the benefits that went along with the old fashioned way of lifestyle for women. Like I said, they did have less freedoms in certain ways, but there was also certain benefits that went along with that. Well, the thing is, nowadays, they still get all of the benefits that they had back then, but now they also have all the more freedoms that the men had back then. But the men today don't get the benefits that women had back then. It just, it's very unbalanced in terms of fairness between the sexes right now. You could even argue that in some ways, men are second-class citizens, basically. And I know a lot of you will say that's hyperbolic. Sure, whatever, okay? That's not like a major argument I'm trying to make, but... And of course, upper class wealthy men, I think they're still doing pretty well these days. Okay, so it's not all men that are struggling right now, but on a societal level, on the average, when we're talking about the median man, it's tough out here, okay? A lot of things are really unbalanced in favor of women. But I'm not trying to tackle feminism in this one. I think things right now on a societal level, systemically speaking, things are easily stacked in women's favor at the expense of men. And in the past, I will accept that maybe things were a little bit stacked in men's favor. Maybe, it's hard to say. I wasn't there, but yeah, I'll leave it at that. That's not the main point of this video. Well, one more thing I do want to say on that topic. Women understand how dating is for men these days exactly as well as boomers understand how the economy is for young people these days. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say. I'll just leave it at that for now. But let's talk about boomers, old folks. Pretty much anyone older than millennials, really. They have no empathy. They have no sympathy. And they just act incredulous at the idea that being a cuck for some corporation might not be worth it these days. Older guys take it for granted that they were only able to get with their wives in a lot of cases because their wife needed a man to support her. Because it wasn't socially normal for women back then to work professional jobs. So they think they got their wife just because, she loves him unconditionally. They don't even make the connection that their career and the social structure at the time, they don't make the connection that that had anything to do with their ability to attract women. So they just don't get it. They cannot understand that for men today, it's a lot more difficult to attract women because most women have jobs, but they still want a man to support them. So they only consider men that earn more than they do. And that leaves a lot of us screwed because, on average, young women earn more than young men, which should be obvious if you pay any attention to the world around you. Women benefit from all kinds of diversity initiatives, and companies are incentivized to hire and promote women for their ESG score or whatever. Like there's some kind of tax thing. I don't know. It exists. And just the culture of modern society. Women are praised, men are denigrated, and men are blamed for all of society's failings. So old people can't even comprehend the reality of the situation. I read a comment the other day that I think is really true. It said that boomers haven't updated their model of the world since the 70s. And that is completely true. They lived in a golden age. I think as a little more time passes, historians will actually start to view the period of time from the end of World War II until maybe 2008, sometime around then. It's actually going to be viewed by historians as a golden age, a gilded age. Although things were definitely going downhill by 2001, maybe earlier, but yeah. My dad still can't understand why I don't just get a job with my 2 STEM degrees. No matter how many times I tell him, I've applied to literally hundreds of jobs. he just can't understand it. He can't understand the level of competition that's out there these days. Most women work now. That alone doubles the competition. And please don't comment about how, well, you're applying to programming jobs. There's actually not a lot of women in those jobs. If that's what you think, then you need to update your model of the world. For entry level or junior positions, yeah, it is still like it's 90% of the applicants are men, but there's 1,000 or more applicants for every job posting. So even if only 5% of those applicants are women, that's like 50 women if there was exactly 1,000 applicants. And those women do have a much better shot at getting chosen for the limited amount of interviews that the company will be doing, regardless of their qualifications. And if you think I'm full of shit, then okay, boomer. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. Have fun living under your rock. But yeah, there's increased competition just due to all the women in the workforce, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing for more women to be in the workforce, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Theoretically, it should be possible to have women in the workforce and still have an economic system where everybody can thrive, but that's just not the system we have currently. But yeah, then there's also competition on a global scale for most jobs, especially most white-collar jobs. It's cheaper for these companies to outsource or just hire someone from a third world country and sponsor them to come live here. And of course, AI makes it so they just don't need as many workers, especially at the entry level. We're screwed. We're screwed. I mean, that's the short and long of it. We are screwed as a society, especially, young men are the ones that are getting the short end of the stick. Somebody's got to be on the bottom, I guess. Somebody's got to take the brunt of the force. And right now, that is this younger generation of men. I am included in the people that's getting screwed by this just because of my delayed development or lack of experience, even though I am squarely in the millennial category. But really, yeah, you younger guys, all of you are feeling what a few of the people in my generation are feeling. I'll put it that way. And talking about how boomers need to update their model of the world, I think a lot of women need to update their model of the world too. Because, that's the crazy thing. It seems like most women my age and younger, they're using the same model of the world that boomers use when it comes to the roles that men are supposed to play in society and the roles that they perceive men playing, while at the same time, they get all the benefits of diversity initiatives and institutionalized support systems and preferential hiring and all that. They have all that, but they're still working under the assumption that they are the oppressed sex. They think men get preferential treatment in hiring and everything. So all the benefits that they get, they think men are getting those benefits and they're the ones that are suffering as a result. They have it completely the opposite of how it actually is. And I really don't get it because even on paper, just right in your face, all these corporations, everywhere you turn, everything is saying basically women first, men last. They're explicit about what their goals are and the way they're operating. But I guess a lot of women, they've been brainwashed by years of these talking points about how women are oppressed. They just assume that men are the ones receiving all the benefits and it's just happening under the cover of darkness or something. I don't know. Like I say, the systems that women benefit from, everybody is shouting it out loud and clear. Female only career fair, women encouraged to apply. Whatever. I've said enough about that, but women are just brainwashed from the time they're born. They're brainwashed into believing that they are super oppressed in every way. So they continue believing that into older ages, despite all the reality happening around them. Reality is a woman with the same degrees that I have can actually get a job with a smile and a firm handshake. Maybe not literally like that, but the path to employment for a woman with my same qualifications, her path to employment is a lot easier than it is for me. Period. Okay? You can say I'm making excuses, but that is how it is. Okay? I'm just telling you how it is. I've been long enough, like, I can see patterns in life. Like, I'm not a moron. I am a moron maybe in some ways, but like, I can see this. Okay? No amount of gaslighting is going to make me believe that what I see before my own eyes isn't happening. If you want to stay underneath your rock, then you can go ahead and do that. But I'm going to be over here in reality, perceiving the actual world as it really is. Okay? Unfortunately, I do have to see it how it is. I can't turn it off, actually. I wish I could be ignorant about this. I wish I could, because at least then I might be able to fit in a little bit. Maybe I could make some friends or something. But yeah, the other thing about women's model of the world being out of date, they still expect men to provide for them. But their expectations for what it means for a man to provide for them is through the freaking stratosphere. These ladies are working professional jobs these days. They are lawyers, doctors, engineers, software developers. Yes, they are software developers, despite what some of you try to say. And, nurses. Well, the thing about nurses, that's always been a female-dominated field, but they do make a pretty good amount of money. So when a woman already makes $85,000 a year, she still, in most cases, is probably hoping to eventually quit working so she can start a family and be supported by her husband. But she earns $85,000 a year. Okay, so that's the baseline for her as a single person. Her expectations for her future husband is going to be at least 1.5 times that. So she's only going to be considering men that make like at least six figures. And that's her compromising. She wants a man that makes probably more like 120, 130,000 a year, but women are reasonable people, so they'll settle for six figures if that's what they have to do. And I don't know if anybody's ever talked about this. I just randomly thought of this just now as I was speaking, but a lot of women do retire early after they get married so they can stay at home with the kids and everything. But those same women, a lot of times, they had received preferential treatment in hiring, and that's how they got their jobs when they first started their careers, which means, for every woman that gets an entry-level job, there's a man that did not get that job. But half of those women quit after like 5 years to raise a family. But there's a whole cohort of men that just never were able to get that first entry-level job because those jobs were going to women. So those men gave up in some cases and they just stay perpetually underemployed or maybe even unemployed. Meanwhile, the women that blocked them from entering the workforce, they just quit after a few years. And now those companies aren't even hiring at the entry level because of AI and just the state of the economy in general. So there's a dark colored capsule for you. I don't really have anything to add to that. I was just thinking out loud, but yeah, what I was saying, back in the day, back in boomer times, women's expectations were obviously a lot lower than they are now because most of them didn't work. Or if they did work, it wasn't professional jobs. They worked relatively low-paying jobs. So their baseline for how much money they needed a man to make in order to support them was a lot less. But women these days, they want to eat out, they want to use DoorDash, they want the new iPhone, they want their Labubus or whatever, those things they collect. Basically, they want to live a bachelor lifestyle and have it all paid for by their husband, when really, if you're the one staying home, you should be cooking and cleaning and all that, homemaking. But these modern women, a lot of times, are doing is they want to outsource all the homemaking. They want to outsource the cooking. They want to outsource the cleaning. So obviously, men are choosing to drop out of this society. Because duh. We can't find jobs that pay worth a shit. We can't get laid. We can't find a meaningful relationship at all. It's hard to even make regular friends with other dudes because everybody's just addicted to their comfortable little bubble at home, myself included. For sure, I am not perfect. But old people, and frankly, most females of all ages, they act like it's just this huge mystery. You know, what's wrong with men these days? Why don't they even try anymore? Well, duh. Duh. I think you know why if you just pay any attention. If you just think about it for more than 2 seconds, freaking duh. It's not worth it. Duh. Effort does not guarantee success. And at this point, effort doesn't even increase your odds of success by much. So, yeah, I've given up. Yeah, of course. A lot of guys have given up. Because, duh. If you resonated with this video at all, please check out some of my other videos. Please subscribe to help me get to 10,000. I'm almost there. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate you guys.